The Alchemy of Ink and Land. How one man used a printing press to build a $60 million empire while nobody was watching. In 1873, a man rode into Dustfall, Colorado, with nothing but a mule, a broken printing press, and $17 sewn into the lining of his coat. He didn't carry a gun. He carried words. And words in the American frontier of the 1870s were more dangerous than any bullet ever cast. By 1889, that same man, a quiet, unremarkable drifter named Solomon Paige, had accumulated land deeds, water rights, and mineral claims across 6 counties worth an estimated $60 million in today's money. He never robbed a bank. He never bribed a judge. He never threatened a single soul. What he did was far more powerful. He controlled what people believed. In an era when information traveled slower than a horse, when a rumor could kill a town before the truth ever arrived, Solomon Paige understood something that would not be taught in business schools for another 100 years. Perception is property. Reputation is real estate. And the man who controls the story controls the land. Tonight, we open the press. If you love untold history, hit that subscribe button right now. The legends are just waking up. To understand what Solomon Paige did, you first have to understand the world he walked into. The American frontier of the 1870s was not romantic. It was a vacuum. A raw, brutal, information-starved vacuum. Think about what that actually means. No telegraph lines stretched into most frontier territories until the late 1880s. No railroad newspapers, no reliable postal routes. In towns like Dustfall, Colorado, population 400 and shrinking, the nearest major newspaper was printed 200 miles away in Denver. By the time that paper arrived, the news inside it was already 10 days old. In that silence, rumors ruled. A whisper that a water source was drying up could send 12 families packing within a week. A story, true or false, that a silver vein had run dry could collapse land values overnight. A single bad reputation attached to a man's name could destroy everything he had built in 20 years of honest work. Nobody checked, nobody verified, because nobody could. Information was the scarcest resource on the frontier, scarcer than water, scarcer than gold. And into this vacuum came the men who understood its power. Men like Holton Greaves. Greaves was a land speculator operating out of Kansas City with connections to 3 separate railroad expansion committees. He had identified 6 frontier territories, including Dustfall, as sitting on top of what geological surveys suggested was one of the richest undiscovered silver and copper corridors in the American Southwest. His strategy was elegant and evil. He would manufacture a reputational collapse. Spread carefully worded stories, not lies exactly, but shaped truths, suggesting that certain territories were lawless, that their water was contaminated, that their mines were played out, that their leadership was failing them. Panicked families would sell cheap. Greaves would buy. Then the railroad would arrive, the real mineral value would surface, and Greaves would sell at 1,000% profit. He had already done it twice. In Dustfall, he had already started. 3 families had sold and left. The town's blacksmith was rumored to be a wanted man in Missouri, a story with no documented origin. The local creek was being called alkaline in conversations nobody could trace back to a source. The town was being poisoned, and the poison had no face. Until Solomon Paige rode in. Paige had grown up in a print shop in Philadelphia.
His father ran a small newspaper for 30 years. Nothing famous, nothing powerful, just a weekly neighborhood sheet that told people what was happening on their own streets. But Paige had learned something watching his father work. A printed word carries weight that a spoken word never can. When something is spoken, it floats, it changes, it disappears. When something is printed, when it sits in black ink on white paper, when a man holds it in his hands and reads it with his own eyes, it becomes fact in his mind. It becomes real. And in a territory where no printed word existed, the first man to print defined reality itself. Paige spent his first week in Dustfall doing what he always did, listening. He sat in the saloon. He walked the cattle pens. He drank bad coffee at the mercantile counter and said almost nothing. But he was mapping. Not land, not water. He was mapping what people believed, and more importantly, what they feared. He identified 3 core fears driving the community into panic. 1, that the land had no future value. 2, that outside criminals were infiltrating the town. 3, that their own leadership was failing them. Every one of these fears had been planted by Greaves' network of paid rumor agents, men who passed through, dropped strategic conversations, and disappeared before anyone thought to question them. Paige recognized the system immediately, because it was the same system his father had accidentally used in reverse. His father's newspaper had calmed communities with verified information. Greaves was destabilizing communities with unverified fear. The weapon was identical. The direction was simply different. Here is the strategy Paige documented in what would become his private operational journal, the document historians now reference as the Frontier Fortune. He called his approach the 3 columns. Column 1, establish authority. Print a newspaper. Give it a name. Give it a masthead. Give it the visual weight and formal structure of an institution. In a town that had never had a local paper, this alone would command immediate respect and readership. Column 2, control the counter-narrative. Don't attack Greaves directly. Don't name him. Instead, systematically print verified, sourced, factual information that dismantled each planted rumor one by one. Publish the geological survey data showing active mineral value. Print interviews with the town's blacksmith. Let the man speak for himself in his own words on permanent record. Commission a water quality assessment and publish the full results. Column 3, document the opportunity. While calming fear on one side, simultaneously print stories that attracted outside investment and settlers to the territory. Frame Dustfall not as a dying town, but as an undervalued frontier opportunity on the edge of its breakthrough moment. The newspaper would serve 2 masters at once. It would save the town publicly, and it would revalue the land privately. Because Paige, before he ever set a single letter into the press, had quietly identified the specific parcels that geological survey data suggested held the highest mineral probability. Using the last of his $17 and a small promissory note backed by his printing equipment, he secured a purchase option on 4 of those parcels from desperate families who didn't yet know what they were sitting on. He hadn't stolen anything. He had simply read the information that others hadn't bothered to find.
Like this video if you believe strategy beats luck every single time. The first edition of the Dustfall Pioneer was printed on a Tuesday morning in March of 1874. Paige printed 200 copies. He distributed every single one for free. The front page carried 3 stories. The first was a documented water quality report from a territorial geological officer verifying the creek was clean, the alkaline contamination story a complete fabrication. The second was a full interview with the town blacksmith, Thomas Harker. including his documented residency history, his family record, and 3 signed character testimonials from neighboring county officials. The Missouri wanted man story evaporated in the face of hard printed evidence. The third story was a detailed survey analysis of regional mineral deposits, written in plain language a farmer could understand, showing that the Dustfall corridor sat within a geological formation consistent with active silver and copper production in 3 comparable territories. The town did not panic that Tuesday. For the first time in 8 months, the town exhaled. Greaves received a copy of the Dustfall Pioneer 4 days later in Kansas City. His response was immediate and predictable. He sent 2 men to Dustfall to find out who was running the paper and to make a quiet offer to purchase it. Paige declined. Greaves escalated. He attempted to place competing narrative pieces through a friendly correspondent at the Denver paper, suggesting that the Pioneer's mineral data was fraudulent, that Paige himself was a grifter with a criminal past in Philadelphia. Paige printed the accusation in full on page 1 of the following week's Pioneer. Then he printed the documented rebuttal directly beneath it, his own Philadelphia Printing Guild record, his father's 30-year newspaper history, a notarized character statement from a Philadelphia City Council member. He let Greaves attack, and then he used the attack to build his own credibility. Every move Greaves made in the shadows, Paige dragged into the printed light. And while Greaves was spending money and energy trying to destroy a newspaper, Paige was quietly closing his land purchase options. Using revenue from the Pioneer's growing advertising base, merchants who now had a reliable local platform to reach customers, Paige converted his purchase options to full deeds on 7 mineral-rich parcels. He had spent less than $400 in total. He owned land that geological teams would later assess at values no frontier family in 1874 could have imagined. In 1877, the first confirmed silver strike in the Dustfall corridor was documented on a parcel owned by the Harker family, the same blacksmith Thomas Harker whose reputation Paige had defended in his very first edition. Paige had quietly structured a revenue-sharing agreement with the Harker family 18 months earlier, helping them retain their land rather than sell to Greaves's agents. The strike made Thomas Harker a wealthy man. It made Solomon Paige wealthier still. By 1881, 4 of Paige's 7 parcels had confirmed mineral production. He used those revenues not to leave Dustfall, but to expand the Pioneer into a 3-territory regional paper, the dominant information source across a 200-mile radius. And with that information dominance came something Greaves never anticipated: political power. Territorial legislators read the Pioneer. Federal land officers read the Pioneer. Railroad expansion committees, the very same committees Greaves had relied on for inside information, now sought Paige's analysis before making regional decisions. Greaves attempted one final legal challenge in 1883, contesting 2 of Paige's mineral deed acquisitions on technical grounds. The Pioneer covered the case in meticulous, documented detail across 6 consecutive editions. Public opinion across 3 territories was not favorable to Greaves. The challenge was dismissed. Holton Greaves never operated in Colorado again. Paige used Pioneer revenues and mineral royalties to fund the construction of Dustfall's first proper school, a 2-room stone building that served 3 generations of frontier families. He endowed a small lending library with 200 books. He financed the legal incorporation of Dustfall as a proper township, giving its residents formal legal protections that land speculators could never again easily circumvent. When Paige died in 1901, his estate, land, mineral rights, and publishing assets, was valued at $60 million in today's equivalent.
He left 40% of it in a community trust for Dustfall. His name is on a small plaque outside a library that still stands. Most people who walk past it have no idea what he did. Share this story with one person who needs to change their mindset today. One person. Solomon Paige didn't fight with fists. He didn't fight with lawyers or guns or money he didn't have. He fought with ink. He understood that in a world full of noise and fear and confusion, the man who provides clarity becomes indispensable. That's what I'm trying to do here. Every story I research, every script I write, every video I put on this channel, I'm building something that my family can point to and say, he showed up, he did the work, he left something real behind. That's the alchemy. Ink into land, words into wealth, stories into legacy. I'll see you in the next legend.